Well,
can
you know,
stand-
if you go to the Greek embassy, I think the
Are
Greek
you
embassy.
kidding? I'm not going to Chicago.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Okay.
So don't scare our Zoom participants. Okay, excellent. All right, let's begin with Prosepki. We'll start with prayer, and then we will begin our discussion. Okay. All together, our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth.
Does anybody have any other questions or comments about everything that you've heard, especially from?
And forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us.
Against us,
And lead
lead
us
us
not
not
into
into temptation, but deliver us
deliver
from
us
evil.
from evil. Amen.
Mhm.
We're learning the kinks of everything anyways. Thank you for being here tonight. I don't have my book. I think I gave mine away because yeah, you don't have yours? Yeah, can we use it?
I brought the
and then-
wrong one.
That's fine. Then Chris will give you one. Do the people online have a book? Priscilla, Louis?
I think
Yeah.
I have them. Yeah.
Yeah, good job, Peter. Bravo. Eleni Mustakas, did you get the book?
Yes, I have it.
Thank you,
Priscilla,
Irini
thank you,
and Dimitra. Did you get yours?
No,
It didn't come yet?
Did you ever
No.
visit Essex?
Okay, and then Dimitra,
Who? Did Stevie?
D. Celis, I know that's you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, did you get it?
No, I didn't, Father.
Okay, so then your two should be on the way. We'll make sure to have it for the next one.
If not,
Um,
I can get it.
No, we have it, but
But I'm right
we'll
around the corner.
right, we have it. Don't worry about it. We'll have it taken care of. All good, all good. Okay, all right, everyone. So let me share one, and then team and I will have one. Is someone at the door? Yeah, go look. I think there might be someone trying to get in.
Is there a way you can share the screen?
It's because it's a physical book. I don't have a PDF of it.
Okay,
So I can't share the screen for it.
okay,
I'm sorry.
that's okay.
Was it someone? It's weird. Interesting. I heard something. Okay. All right. So I know for our discussion, we're going to be on what is on page 23, which is homily 3, and that's on true freedom and false freedom. So I think this one.
Ilya just walked out.
Oh, that's it. Thank you. I think this will be a great opportunity for us to really think about, because remember in our last conversation, we were talking about in chapter 2, the understanding of man's free agency, which is a unique word to understand. I think most people, we've said it even in our meeting, that free agency we understand like in like the sports terms, where like you're a free agent and who's going to pick you up and where you're going to go and stuff like that. But it shows to our freedom. Now we're going to talk about true freedom versus false freedom. We didn't read this one, right? Louis, do you remember our last meeting? I don't want to make sure we read this over.
No, we didn't.
Right, we only went for the first two.
That's when I got my book on the last.
Right, and
meeting.
you were part of the second one,
Yeah.
correct? Yeah, okay, just making sure. There's a lot of similarities because of what the topics are, especially about freedom and lack of freedom. So that's why it gets a little conflicting. So I'm gonna start, and then we'll go around. Louis, Priscilla, do you want to read tonight? Give me a thumbs up if I know. Thank you. Okay, and so will Louis. Great. Thank you, guys. So I'll call you guys when we get around to that point. Thank you, everyone. All right, so beginning. So at the top it says, "For the good that I will to do, I do not do, but the evil I will not to do that I practice." And that comes from Romans. That comes from St. Paul's letter to the Romans, chapter 7, verse 9. And it says here, "In man, who is a spiritual material being, two wills appear under the same guise as the innermost expression of the single person when he wills the enjoyment of a particular object, and while they're indistinguishable in terms of appearance. These two wills greatly differ from one another because of the essential difference between the underlying causes from which they originate. For the spirit desires the things of the spirit, while the flesh desires the things of the flesh. The opposition between these mindsets gives rise to mutual resistance and intense conflict, in which seeks to prevail over the other and to oppose its own rule. In this struggle, the inner man desires mastery of the spirit, because it naturally sympathizes with the mind of the spirit. And because the mind of the spirit is life and peace. But the outer man desires mastery of the mind of the flesh, which is death. Thus, the apostle Paul also says, for to be carnally minded is death, but to be spiritually minded is life and it is peace. For this reason, flesh and spirit war against each other. Hence, Paul says, for the flesh lusts against the spirit, and the spirit against the flesh. And this is because the carnal mind is an enmity against God. For it is not subject to the law of God, nor indeed can be. And the mind of the Spirit makes intercession for the saints according to the will of God. All right, let's stop there. In your thoughts, everyone, what does this conflict feel to you with the spirit and of the flesh? Is there a conflict? Do you recognize a conflict? Do you see a conflict? Because I know I can say a few things about it, but I want to hear from yourselves as well, too. What do you guys see and understand? Chris, what were you going to say?
Well, for the, when they say spirit of the death, meaning that you're dying. I mean, you're not here, let's put it this way. You're not at the point, but spirit is, as you're living, you got that always going spirit,
Mm-hmm.
where after death,
And what does the flesh want?
the flesh wants the living.
Yeah, right. It always wants to live.
It always wants to live.
Right. Do you ever hear like I always look to the historical scenes of Alexander the Great, any of these emperors, what were their goals? It was for immortality. It was always to remain alive. But remember, that's outwardly, not inwardly. Now look at us now, modern day, we also perform this as well too with the flesh, physically. What do you see modern day that we make the point that we want to do with the flesh, physically? It's kind of obvious.
Depends how old you are.
Right.
True. But like, here's the example. I will use like, I use them often, but movie stars, especially like the Kardashians, who we see them often. Yeah, plastic surgery, right? Fillers, lip fillers, Botox. I understand there's also different reasons for this and that, but usually when we're trying to do them, it's as if they're not pleased with their appearance, or if they are getting older. I mean, my goodness, and nothing to my women, I adore you, and to the ones online. But I remember my mom and anyone, they always talk about, right? Any crow's feet or those lines. Oh, God help us.
Care less.
Russell, you're one of a kind. Anyways, but to that point, it is a very superficial experience that they then want to address so it does not define them. So many will go to the ends of the earth. I was just reading about someone who, I don't know, she was a, oh boy, gosh, what's her name?
A movie star.
It's typo, but they have like modern day terms. She isn't, no, they're called Instagram.
Oh, influencers.
Oh, influencers, bravo.
Influencers.
They're influencers.
Yeah.
That means they're on social media, they influence people. Anyways, this woman went to, I believe, like Florida, or I think like in Mexico, and went for a cheaper surgery for something that she wanted, and then ended up having cardiac arrest. Just simply because they wanted to do something, and then they would go to whatever means, obviously cheaper, or possibly like she's already had so many surgeries that other physicians wouldn't approve, just to achieve what she wanted to achieve outwardly. But then the reality, I think, in this conversation, and I want to hear from anyone else, is I see the conflict, because usually when we're looking at the outwardly, and I say this especially in the spiritual manner, especially through confession, the hardest thing for a human to do is look inwardly to the spirit. Because when you look inwardly, then you're going to be like, wow, it's the attitude when you talk to someone when they're because you can't say that people aren't defined, they are born evil. There's always some hope. There's always some sort of love. The question they have to ask ourselves inwardly is, why is that love not shining? Why is it hiding? Why is it not being addressed? Or why is it not shining? And you have to look, because I think that's where the inward has the struggle, the spirit, because they don't want to see it, because either PTSD, something might have happened, they kind of put it down away and they just kind of leave it there in their body, or B, it's off to the side and they don't want to address it. Like, the proverbial monkey in the room. I love it when we have situations when we're dealing with work, family, entities or whatever, and there's a problem, but we're not going to address it. Let's just go around it. right? And me, I am someone who's very, that's how I operate. But it's, again, everything has a time and a situation. But me, I am confrontational. When I say confrontational, not to be out of anger and malice, I don't want to waste time that is precious. And I just heard this from someone last night. It was very moving, but I don't want to waste time because I can't get it back. And so if there's someone that has something against me, I would like to know what I did wrong to them, and then to be able to apologize and ask for forgiveness. And then vice versa. So that I would go to the person like, hey, Vasily, hey, Maria, this just happened. I just feel bad. I want to get off my chest because why? I want the peace of my mind first. And I also want to try to achieve a peace at the same level. And when you put your heart out there and then it's not reciprocated, at least you know you made the effort. And then from there, and it's like head to the hands of God, and you kind of go from there. But someone said it yesterday too, is, when they were talking about stewardship, it wasn't just some sort of setting, but when they actually pointed out that the greatest aspect of stewardship is time. It's not talents or treasures, which I agree, but time, because it's something that you can never get back or pay accordingly to what it's worth. Because when someone gives their time, dedication, service, volunteering, and giving in that manner, I can't pay for that, because especially when it's someone volunteering it, that's something that's immeasurable. You can't say, well, a volunteer is worth $50 an hour. You might have volunteers who do 90% of the work. You might have a volunteer who does 10% of the work, but it's their time. It's their gift. Because why? They'll never get that back. That hour they just served, the hour that we're here for Bible study and stuff like that, you're never going to get it back. So I have that attitude where I said, especially about the spirit and the flesh, is I don't want to squander it, because the reality for me as a priest, and I think you've all seen this last week, we've buried 5 of our loved ones from our community in about a 7-day span. That's done.
I had 3 funerals in 7 days.
You know what I mean? That conclusion is over. And so I can't go back and say, I wish I said this to them, or I said this to there. So then I always challenge people, please do not wait. Do not think. Make sure you have your peace of mind. Make sure your prayer is that strength of yours where you could find that peace. And so that you don't allow the conflict of the flesh to override any difficulty that your spirit would have, because then from there, if your spirit is crushed, what does the flesh can also feel as well too? I think there's a reciprocation, or there's a direct correlation, because usually if we look outwardly, that means we're not looking inwardly. And when we're looking inwardly, you could say inwardly, look at monastics. Monastics, they don't care about outwardly experience, exposure, right? They usually have, drab clothes. They have, if it's gentlemen, they have long beards. Women, they're covered. Appearance is futile, it's irrelevant. But their focus is what? The inward, the battle of the spirit, so they could remain with Christ. But here's the thing that I tell people, and I always point this out. When you talk to monastics, they admire the Christian who attempts and struggles in their prayerful life in the world. Monastics are not of the world, because they've gone outside of the world to just be in a monastic life of prayer and worship. So when we struggle, because the reality is we have to have a balance. You have to have a balance both outwardly, flesh, and you have to have a balance inwardly for spirit. Because if you don't address both, they will actually both suffer. You can't just address the one, because then you're going to focus only on the one, and you'll realize that that's superficial outwardly. And then if you don't focus on the spirit, how am I going to be saved? Can you be saved by taking care of yourself outside?
If somebody goes for, how you call it, the Kardashians, Tom won't allow me to watch those things. Do you pray?
Or
Look more beautiful. Do you pray to God?
is that important? Is it important in the bottom? Is it important in the?
Well, to me, if I go for, let's say, cancer operation, I do pray to go away, and it happened.
Oh,
But
yeah,
I
but you
won't-
said to look good.
Yes,
So
I
cancer.
pray for, let's say, for cancer.
Well, then let me
But
give.
would I pray if I went to fix my face?
Let me give it. Let me give the hypothetical. What about a woman who goes through was it mastectomy? For breast cancer,
Yeah.
and then they don't have their breasts anymore.
So-
What do you think they pray for more? To survive, or that their breasts remain? To survive.
To survive, of
Okay,
course.
so it doesn't matter about the outwardly experience.
Yeah,
And then if anything, everyone has their natural beauty as it is. Now, the rawness comes into play is when how people perceive you after the fact. where let's just say someone had a cancer diagnosis or this and that, and then they're either looked less upon, or then sadly, if it's like an intimate where it's like a husband and wife and then they don't seem attractive, that's when it gets very difficult. But that's because that's what all our focus is. We've lost the focus on the spirit. I mean, I tell people, like, did you marry that person because of how beautiful they looked, or about the character of the person that really connected you into that manner? Because I would hope it'd be the second, but sadly, many go to the first part. That's why many get divorced. Even late divorces, 25 years, 40 years. Oh my goodness. Your whole life together, you're getting divorced now? To each their own. I mean, who knows? Maybe someone just wanted some peace and serenity. To each their own. But that just goes into one topic. But let's continue this because it'll go into the next paragraph. Paragraph 2, TM.
Gotcha. Behold what the Apostle Paul says regarding this coexistence of the two minds and the natural sympathy of man towards the mind of the Spirit. For I delight in the law of God according to the inward man. But I see another law in my members, warring against the law of my mind and bringing into captivity to the law of sin which is in my members. Thus by nature man accepts the law of God because he delights in the law according to the inner man, as in his own law, the law of his nous, and the will of which expresses the mind of the Spirit is the true will of man. Being in agreement with the law of his nous, conformed to the law of God, to which the inner man delights. Thus, St. John of Damascus also says, the good is lovely and desirable by nature, and it is always naturally desired. But the evil is desire contrary to nature, meaning when we desire something other than what is naturally desirable.
Okay,
Do you want to read the
let's
rest?
pause there. Thoughts? Louis, Priscilla, I want to hear from you guys. Anyone else that's online too, from what you just heard?
Yeah, I mean, even from what we were talking about before, a couple of things, I think as a culture, we put too much emphasis on the way we look, the youth. It's not a positive thing to grow old and be wisdom. We don't respect your elderly like we should. And I think too, we spend so much focus on this life rather than the afterlife, because it's not truly known to us, and things that are unknown are fearful to us. And a lot of times we pray for, yes, the survival of our loved ones, but at the same time, we need to maybe move forward into thinking about praying for them to have strength to deal with their cancer, to deal with their illness, according to God's will, whatever that means, that they survive and we have them for more time in this life, or they're, taken from us and no longer in pain. So I know that's the struggle, but isn't that what we're trying to do in looking at the care of our soul, to be looking to the life after?
Right. I think, great point, Priscilla. A lot of this is the finish line. The finish line of the whole life is, what are you going to receive? And as we brought up, I think in the other couple meetings, most people throughout the world don't want to address the elephant in the room of life after death, or death, life after death or death. Those are actually two steps.
Right.
We just want to focus about the now and the superficial now. Like I saw today, what would you define as a merit of a good person? Now, what is the merits or people we admire or we look up to? Modern day. Don't tell me, don't tell me Jesus, because I know you admire him. I want someone modern day that people who they consider they look up to, because what I've been hearing and seeing, I'll give the example. So for today, they announced like on Forbes list of the top 400 richest people, and Michael Jordan is on there as the first athlete ever with like a total net worth of over $3 billion. Here's the problem though. Everyone resonates with wealth and success as prominence and as someone to look up to. Okay. When you look at financials, people look at the guru of Omaha, right? Who's that? That's Warren Buffett. When we look at science and you look at like technology, they look at Microsoft and they look at Bill Gates. They look at Forbes. They look at Amazon's, right? All these people, and they all look at them. I was like, I want to be like them. Okay, that's usually a male dominance attitude. Women, who are women looking up to modern day? And sadly, like we said, the examples are that we're seeing like, okay, you have the Kardashians, you have other influencers and how they're embodying what life is. And I'm proud that most people I see can be able to not, put the focus on those people. Like, it might be a phase or see them and grow past it. I think that's called maturity. The sad thing is the reality of how many, and then even older people, when I'm saying older, not really older, but more like 50s, 40s, still look to these people as examples, as influencers in their lives. I get conflicted because then I'm like, so what's our goal? What is your goal? Because you have people who will want to imitate them. You have people who want to look like the Kardashians. You have people that are like, I want to be a basketball star just like Jordan and stuff like that. Listen, we all love them, right? But with all due respect, I'm not 6'8". I'm not in these manners. I think the problem is we're also living in a fantasy. We don't want to live in the reality. Now, it could be in the setting. So usually when someone's in a destitute place or comes from a poor lifestyle, they're looking to something better. But then the problem that we have, most people, we have a modern middle class, blue collar society, especially in the United States, where you all have schools, we all do well, we all have clothes, we all have food. Yet we still look to that at top. And what's my problem with the top? When you look at those levels, there's never an attitude of fullness, edification, satisfaction, fulfilled. There's always a desire of wanting more. And if we don't have a life with Christ, that's why I always think things are so hollow, that we just do these things as temporary things. And like, okay, what's the next fad? Because what usually happens with all these people, influencers, movie stars and stuff like that, what do we want to do with them after we've either used them or seen them?
Well, they die down, become
Right?
irrelevant.
Or we
Yeah.
chew them up and spit them out. Right?
Yeah.
Literally, the best example is like, look at what we have. So it's polarizing when you go into social ethics classes, both in college and continuing education. Our society, we have sometimes a bipolar mentality where we love someone, but within the same moment, we actually enjoy when we're able to take them down as well too. It's that proverbial pedestal. You want them up there, but we gain when they fall too, right? Because then they're brought to our level or stuff like that. And if you look at it, that's actually why there's so many that are not only movies, athletes, prominence or whatever, that all fall and struggle. And the problem is, because we're so shallow personally, we only look outwardly.
Yeah.
The reality is I could care less what A through Z does. I got to see, what am I doing? Because we usually do that because we don't want to admit our own faults. That's where the sense of repentance really comes into play. Because if I pray and I think about for forgiveness, I shouldn't be looking at the outwardly expressions. It always starts inside. That we live daily, our society, the publican and the Pharisee story, continuously. You can put whoever you want as the Pharisee in different forms. They go up and say, I fast 3 times a week. I go and do this and everything else. I give to the poor. I created a philanthropic society, whatever, you name it. They can put that thing, they're like boasting themselves, right? They're beating their chest like you did. But then you have us, or we need to be like the publican, right? Where we're down and we have to have our head down out of a sense of humility and recognize our fallen state so we can open our hearts to repentance and to Christ's love. But the problem is we're too busy looking up out of pride and not looking at humility. And I think St. Ectadius in the next couple paragraphs, he's going to talk about that. So Effie, since you're with us, why don't you read the third paragraph, please?
However, although the true will is the will of the Spirit, that is the desire for the good, for what is naturally desirable, it is nevertheless often unable to prevail over the resistance of the will of the flesh, about which the Apostle Paul speaks. The law of the flesh, which is in our members, which is captive to the law of sin. The Apostle says the following about the influence of the law of the flesh. For I have the desire to do what is good, but not the ability to accomplish it. For the good that I will to do, I do not do, but the evil I will not to do, that I practice. For the inner man wills and desires the good as its natural desire, as the innate good and its very own law. But the law of the flesh, the law of sin, opposes the activities of our true freedom and hinders the manifestation of the good and dictates unto us the work of evil. Hence the apostle says again, now if I do what I will not to do, it is no longer I who do it, but the sin that dwells in me. And so truly goodness is the law, which is the innate and true will of man. And evil is a law of a different nature. It is something that is not created by God and is in opposition to the true will of man.
Mhm.
For this reason, when man does good, he does so freely and in accordance with the will of the inner man and is truly free. But when he works evil, he does so without freedom because the will becomes subject to the law of sin and he becomes unfree and enslaved to it. Therefore, he who does the good is free and he who does evil is a slave. And true freedom is the sovereignty of the mind of the spirit, which brings about the good. And the false freedom is a tyranny of the mind of the flesh, which works evil things.
Excellent, Effie. Thoughts? Now we're talking about enslavement. We've talked about this in other forums as well, too. What are your feelings about this and about the definition of sin and the inward part of the flesh? Yes.
Thing that comes to mind are the 7 deadly sins. Avarice, greed, lust, sloth. Those are all please the flesh. And when you become used to that and look that out, you do become a slave to that, is what comes to mind.
Correct. Right. And most of us, when we struggle with whatever sin we might have, it's an entrapment, and it's the modern verbiage of addiction. When you're a sinner, you're addicted to the sin. And I always point out, I say to all those I speak with in my spiritual counsel, and in this manner, that St. Basil tells us that the devil put the sense of us to have shame on repentance than on the act of sin. Because if it's the same attitude with us when I think about like the church, if everyone knew what we get from the church, sacramental worship, partaking of Christ's body and blood, if that was in everyone's heart and mind, the church would be being brought down daily because it would be so filled with people, right? If that was in the heart of every man. But instead, we are in the heart of a mindset of desires, of flesh, and of need that fulfills feelings that we have, and that we know it's wrong, yet I'm still going to act on it because it's easier to perform sin than it is to repent of my sin and change my way. 2 words, right? 2 ways. You got to repent and change. Well, this isn't so bad. I'm okay, right?
Mhm.
I mean, I even have, when I talk with people, and I've seen it when you hear any psychological discourse, when you talk to people who go to AAs and work and are, coaches and counselors, that's how they rationalize their addiction. Well, it wasn't so bad, or I'm okay. I survived this. What about someone if they've ever OD'd or have struggled with stuff and they continue it? How many lifelines do you need? How many chances? We, as a humanity, always have an essence of playing with fire. We have no problem testing. Let's see how far we can go. We do this with modern society. Our goals, we want to I tell people in my sermons, you hear me on Sunday, I say, we're called to be in communion with God. That's like a oneness. We, modern society, want to become God. How? You see it, every action.
Well, we play God.
We
too.
play God. We
Yeah.
create, we destroy, we rule, we power, control, we determine wealth as a superiority. All of these things are antithesis of God. But we think it's God because it's a defining moment of enslavement of others. Yet, isn't it funny that in this conversation, we're talking about freedom? And Christ, God from creation, willed for us to be free, his humanity. Isn't that profound? By giving us free will. And I brought up a few Sundays ago, maybe it was a month and a half ago, I said, you look at mythology, right? Greek, Roman, Assyrian, Persian, stuff like that. All the gods always had a desire of control. And they always wanted the reciprocation from their followers, right? You have to make a sacrifice. You have to give praise to me. If you want me to do something, it's transactional. That's a new word I'm using now that I heard someone say to me. Our lifestyles as humans are transactional beings, where I understand a relationship with God when it's transactional. I give something, I get something.
Well, peace, we get peace from
Did you
God.
give something to get peace?
I forgive, I have.
That's a spiritual one, right? Okay,
Yeah.
that's good. But most humans, when we
I
ask,
go to confession, I get, have so much peace after.
when humans live, they live on a pretense of transaction. In other words, if I work, I get money. If I help someone, it's the brownie point in life. Like we tell little kids, right? Oh, you get a gold star for pick up the garbage, you got your allowance. Transactional. Not do it because I told you to, or do it because you need to help the family. Oh, I don't want to, right? It's transactional. And that's what humans are as well, too. That's why we have fallen from God. Because what's the transaction with God and a human? What do usually most people ask from God,
Money, power.
right?
No,
Health,
not me.
health, and then health,
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 yeah.
health, yeah. But the problem with health is we determine, so here, I'm diagnosed with cancer. God, I need you to help me. And then when someone talks to me, and I'm like, okay, so then what? You said that. Did he hear you? What do they say? I don't know, right? But if he didn't help me, then he didn't hear me. That's how you rationalize it, because you didn't get help. So that's a transaction less.
Yeah.
You asked, and then he helped you. There's your transaction, right? But did he help you or didn't he help you?
And that, well, I would say that from something like that, you would just have to be patient.
Right?
Yeah. Okay.
You don't know. The problem is a lot of these answers are unknown, and we determine them as God is like, when they think of him as like a higher being, a greater entity, that's how he works. It's per situation. I said, I think there's bigger things, even into our own lives, that we don't see. And I said, in most of these manners, we don't know the future of our lives. And then we sometimes look back and to say the what if, or what could I have done? But then as I started in our conversation, time is so precious. Why did you allow it to be squandered at the point where you're thinking about it now? Whether it could have prevented or not, you don't know. That's the other problem too. It's all assumptions. And I think the problem is with us as a humanity. That's why, if you ever look, the most powerful movies and the most exciting events evolve an aspect of like time travel, a discussion of past, present, and future, because it gives you a lot of thought about what if, and what if I could have done this, or what if I could have done that. But we're called not to think in that manner, because we have to think about the now and what you are dealt with. But the problem really comes into play, especially in that transactional attitude, because then they put it against God. I was sick, you didn't help me. My wife was ill. You're gonna blame God? Certainly. Right? Who else are you gonna blame? That's the other thing too. You have to rationalize actions or consequences. Then they also think it's judgment. It's judgment or punishment. Right? Someone got ill, they got punished. And I said, for doing what? They're like, I don't know, they had done something. I said, really? Is that how we're gonna have to rationalize everything? I said, then what? And then I always use the adage, why do good things happen to bad people? And why do bad things happen to good people?
Just need, yeah.
Okay.
And so the problem is, as a human, we want black and white, yet we're so complex.
But in the New Testament, when Jesus was preaching, the apostle asked what he done or what the parents done.
Oh,
He's
yeah.
blind, or they always wanted to blame somebody from the family why the kid didn't have eyes.
Because they didn't know. That's usually when we want to find an answer for something, it's usually a sense of a type of immaturity, because you want to just be given the straightforward answer. And I tell people, I'm like, but does it matter whether the parents sinned or that the child was born blind? That's irrelevant. Now we're at the presence of this now. That, it's like the same adage of like, this family is cursed. I don't know if people believe in that stuff, right? No,
They do.
we're cursed and it's been like this our whole lives. And someone did something wrong,
Tatarameni,
right?
tatarameni.
Or they say someone did mahika, right?
yeah,
All of these things and stuff like that. And I said, well, why? Is it because you just had a bad string of circumstances? Remember, us as humans, we're even though people say it, we are the most attended to luck people in creation. We look forward to luck, right? When you have good luck, man, you're riding high as a kite. But when you're in bad luck, you just say it out loud, man, I just don't have it, right? I can't win. I say when someone's like, Father, my car, I had a flat tire. I found out I'm getting fired, like all together. I just can't, I'm just having bad luck. I said, okay, it happens. I always laugh. My favorite things that I see, a lot of the stuff is from the movie. You ever saw the movie Forrest Gump? Forrest Gump has, even though it's a fictional movie, it has so much beauty and purity to it that really resonates with life, right? And from an innocent person from the eye of Forrest Gump, who couldn't comprehend the realities of life, yet he was still saying in his mindset because of how he was pure and innocent. That's why I remember, like when he was running across the country, and he followed behind the car, or then the person says, stuff happens. He says, shit happens, and he's like, oh, interesting that he says it that way, but it's implied because not there's no God that's vengeful. There's no God that, oh, I don't like Chris today. Let's mess with his garage. Oh, come on, spring, right? Or my sump pump broke. It's like we throw the whole world up. Oh no, why did this happen? Or my car. Or then we get to levels, right? Something happened. But then if it's to our family, if it's to our health, right? And then it's because we're in a sense of sensitivity, because we don't have answers. We don't know, what do we do? And the problem is, what happens when there is no answer? I've dealt with that with so many people, especially those dealing with diseases, incurable ones. What do you tell people who are dealing with Lou Gehrig's disease, where there's no cure, right? And they just, right? Cancer. My mother-in-law, when she was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, never did they tell us that we could cure it. And then when they told us, I knew because I've dealt with it, that they couldn't have surgery, which is defined as the Whipple surgery, especially for that type of disease. And they didn't say that to us. I'm like, all right, so now what? And then you're getting these new terminologies, which are appropriate. And that's what? Quality of life. What are we going to do just to help them, just to continue? And then she would do her radiation and her chemo, but it was just more to just allow her to survive for another, 2 years, right? From the diagnosis. The problem is it's like, so you want a cure. But then I said, okay, but I'm not implying that it's not good that we don't have a cure. Don't think in that manner. But it's like, we're just so black and white that, we're only looking to the negative to keep that person or to that connection there for the now, to not know the future. And I said, that's to that situation. I said, that's on the spirit of that person. Because I can't tell you the amount of people that I dealt that have cancer who have come to peace with their battle.
Or,
Right? I mean, some survive, some don't.
well,
And so
it's up to God.
yeah, but it is, but you got to have faith to do that. Most people don't, because then they put blame. You have to put a blame on something. Who did what? Why did this happen? Right? And then we go into scenarios. We go into theories, conspiracies. Because of this, I had a cell phone. I had this. I had that. All over the place, whatever it might be. All of that stuff comes into play. But sadly, the reality is, where are we? And what has it done to us, so that we can realize the spirit compared to the flesh, and so that we just continue with life. So I think I want that for some food for thought as well.
Let me ask you,
Also, you're going to go into the next one, so get ready. Yes.
what happened? Well, like now the war.
Mhm.
What do these people say in Ukraine are thinking? Russia decided to bomb them and have the war.
Mhm.
They lost everything that they got.
Well, hold on, but let's put it everywhere. What do we
Any wars.
What do we say for 20 years that when we were doing in Iraq and Afghanistan?
We're at war.
Yeah, but what do we do? What happened when we left? Nothing changed.
Nothing changed.
Yeah, but worse, you lost lives,
You lost it.
and we gave them like an arsenal. You gave them shit. You gave them helicopters, weapons, tanks,
You left
trucks.
You left it behind.
Okay, and we just left it there. So for 20 years, what was that worth? Okay,
all the wars.
bingo.
People don't learn from history.
That's a,
They repeat it
that's
all
a
the
reality.
time.
So it's like, but then who's they gonna blame? You see, that's the man-made desire of evil. God doesn't will wars,
No,
but this goes all the way back to from Adam and Eve to their children, from Cain and Abel. Cain killed Abel because of his jealousy, because of his offering that he made to God, that it was better and it went straight up to heaven compared to his word, floundered. And so he killed him out of jealousy and hatred. And then we see what obviously transpired, but that sadly, that hasn't changed since creation, because now we're just continuing that in a different form, and it's all for a desire of own satisfaction and own gratification. Whoever it is, Russia wanting because they believe Ukraine is a part of them, or that they have people that are from there that are part of Russia. So they say they need to be with us. So we're going to come in and take our land. We will kill people, and that's it. And then Ukraine's doing their thing. And now it's because it's pick a side, you're either for or against. And then the churches got involved, and that was powerful too, because they knew that the church could be a great asset, because all of these countries were very devout to their faith, right? So that's why you see the patriarchate of Russia, now our patriarchate, obviously with Ukraine and all these things, and brings all those fights. But then you see that, there always types of like holy wars. They know when they can add religion into it, it could be a big springboard to whatever someone wants to achieve. The problem usually is for power, it's for greed,
The church
it's
too.
for wealth. And don't forget, the church, because of these situations, now it also has these black marks too. But, the church is always pure. Capital church. Who makes it impure?
people.
Bingo.
It's a
The
self-image.
Crusaders were our worst enemies.
So are bishops,
So the
so are
Venetians,
patriarchates. All of them are. Doesn't matter who it is. You name them, they've all been. We are our worst enemy. But the problem is, we don't see a problem with that. We desire more. We want more power. We want more control. We want more, subservience. That's the problem of life. And even in the, in the world, even at businesses, right? I mean, how many people or businesses can we actually see? Because we got to get back on topic. Do we actually see people where they, not only they coexist, but they actually co-work and cooperate?
No, that doesn't happen.
You know what I mean?
Maybe
Coexist, co-work, and cooperate, regardless of faith, gender, ethnicity, anything. Because a true leader and a true partner and friend walks hand in hand with whoever they are working or participating with. You don't just send people, right? We think of like wars, they just send people, go and, conquer lands or whatever. Or now we don't even send people. Now it's a video game. All right, let's just send bombs here. Let's blow this up. Let's give some damage here. That'll show them, right? Stuff like that. And so what's the reality of all these situations? And that's the problem, is that we are in an attitude of elitists, and now we're godlike, because now I can take life and I can create life, right? I can create life in different forms. I can create substance. I could create food from genetically modify this, or you name whatever this is and stuff like that. Is this what life's about? Now, I don't like to I am a very staunch defender of the attitude of not all apples are bad in the bunch because of one bad apple. I'm very honest about that. The problem is everyone defines it like that. You're Orthodox, you're pro-Russia, you're evil. You're Orthodox, you're pro-Ukraine, you're evil. That's what we've turned into. You're Republican, I'm Democrat, I hate you. You're a Democrat, I'm a Republican, I hate you, right? Whatever, you name it. We do it at sports, but sports, it's comical. Not anymore. Sadly, people take sports too seriously. You're a Cubs fan, Sox fan, oh, we got to start fighting and yell about, I want a title and you want a title and you stink and this. It's always about pride, the upper hand. I got to always be above you. I always have to have control of you. To feel, why? To puff me up, to make me, big and strong? Is that who we are? Sadly, that's how humanity is. Because of why? How shallow and how hollow the spirit is. And it's because they never had formation. Who knows what the relationship with his God, faith, family, I don't know.
well, I'm sure the ones that they commit crimes, they don't pray before they go.
You can't say that. There's plenty of people.
They pray to go and kill somebody in the
Sure, why
street.
not? Yes. You see that,
To
why?
be successful.
You could see that all the time. You could see that, you could see that in any faith. We see it in Orthodoxy. I mean, they're having, tanks and missiles blessed by bishops with holy water. That's appropriate, right? What is this? Same thing you saw with Islam, right? That they're blessed as well too. Before they'll pray, and then you could see even Judaism. Remember what Bishop Aristobulos said? That how these neo-radical Jewish people are committing atrocities against the Christians and especially against the Muslims of modern day Israel, where they're not allowed to have any freedom of speech, no churches, no mosques. What's the difference?
We had to be careful going in certain sections because of some of the zealot Hebrei, not the Musulmani necessarily, but we had to be very cautious throwing rocks at us and everything.
How about that? That's intense. That's intense. Froso, since we got a little time, I'm gonna go to the online people. Priscilla, why don't you read for me, please, for the fourth paragraph?
Where are you?
Page 25, wherefore those who are truly free.
It is, no.
No?
Necessary.
No, page
Oh,
24,
I'm
it
sorry,
is as necessary.
24, it is necessary, I apologize.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. It is as necessary to distinguish between the character of true freedom and that of false freedom, as it is crucial to understand the essential difference between them, because this difference of character leads to a difference in moral condition as well as in ethics, behavior, manner of living, actions, and activities. In general, everything is formed after the character of the one or the other, and even thoughts, notions, reasonings, resolutions, and feelings themselves eventually become either the acts of the truly free man, free, independent, and good, in accordance with true freedom, or else they become unfree, dependent, and evil acts, in accordance with freedom, falsely so called, and because good actions are in accordance with the divine law, with the will of God, while evil actions are opposed to it. It follows that, on the one hand, those who are truly free, who do good, draw near to God, to the highest good, to the highest desire, to beatitude and happiness, while on the other hand, those who are falsely free, who practice evil, depart from God, the highest good, that which is truly desirable, beatitude and happiness, and end up miserable, pitiable, and unhappy. Moreover, because God is light and life and truth, it follows that those who are far from God are in darkness, death, and falsehood, that is, in the dominion of the devil, the father of darkness, death, and falsehood.
Excellent. Anyone wanted to say anything about that? Anyone online? No, kind of continuing our conversation. All right, let's keep moving. Louis, why don't you read the next paragraph?
Sure. Wherefore those who are truly free find themselves in the kingdom of God, while the falsely free find themselves in the kingdom of the devil. Thus, while free actions lead to deification, unfree actions lead to dehumanization. And this is what the demons seek, because they cannot bear the glory of man. Thus one leads up to the highest prestige of glory and honor, while the other drags down to utter disgrace and dishonor. The one leads to life eternal, while the other leads to eternal damnation. The one leads to everlasting light of truth, while the other leads to eternal darkness of falsehood. Hence, it is necessary that we sharply distinguish and differentiate between them, because the association and confusion of such dissimilar wills is extremely dangerous, and it is all the more dangerous insofar as a false free will can deceive and mislead many of those who examine themselves only superficially, and leads them to perdition by convincing them to accept frequently their inner demands and impulses, which flow from their various passions and desires, as if there were as if they were bidding of the true freedom of their will and expressions of the inner man, and it is of spiritual nature.
Excellent. Yeah, that's a good point. That's been kind of hinting at what we were talking about, especially about the fight between good and evil and inner and outer. We're gonna continue because we got a little bit more. Yeah, if you go ahead.
So just reading this, it says, okay, you're free or you're enslaved to the flesh. But my question is, where it said before, I want to do good, but I don't practice it. I probably said it wrong, but so what kind of not coping skills, or what can we do as like in your everyday to improve on yourself and become better? Like, like just an example, like we talked about wars and we talked about big things, but I'm talking day to day. Like you go to a public place and you see something you don't like, and you're like, oh, there she is. Do I say hi to her? Do I be the better person and say hi, or do I just look, like stupid stuff like that? But you feel it in your gut. You know what I mean? So like, how do you deal with the everyday stuff that you have to because even that little thing, like if you feel it in your gut and you're so upset, it's like that's inside that you have to deal with.
Right.
And maybe I'm
No,
the wrong way,
but it's a valid question and point. The thought is, it's kind of defining of when Saint Ignatius is saying this here is that, like I kind of related to like where it's from Saint James's epistle, where faith without works is meaningless or dead. It's in the attitude of what are you doing on your day-to-day life that is either good or you gotta understand, we gotta constitute what is wrong, what is sinful. I guess sometimes you might think something's wrong, but the attitude is more of what are we doing that is sinful. And so when we understand that, then you can go from there, because what's going to happen? You're not going to be perfect every day. The one thing you are guaranteed is you will fall again. The problem though is knowing that, then most people are preferred to then just stay in a fallen state than to make the conscious effort to climb the ladder the following day. And then noting that, then it also helps that when we are participating in the sacramental life of the church, the aspect of confession, fasting, receiving Holy Communion as often as you can with appropriate preparation, and then trying to live a life daily that is focused on God, with God, and for the people of God, then you are participating in it, even if you do fall. But it's noting it that you make it your routine in your life. It's like anyone, it's like anyone who they've had it's a bad habit. So sinful life is a bad habit. You just kind of, it's like cigarettes, right? You smoke it, it's wrong, but you still do it. So then that to change it, you just got to stop it. And then you got to be strong to make a new routine to make sure you don't fall again into it. Well, it's the same thing with confession and with a sinful life. I tell people that once you've asked for forgiveness, you're called to not sin no more. I mean, we're human, we will. But the question is, have you made the effort? You said it. You see this woman, or you see the situation where you're at work and it's wrong, but you don't say anything. But then sometimes maybe it's how that's done. Maybe it's not to say something, maybe it's to do something where maybe her attitude or whatever is rude. And then instead, let's just say she was mean to a coworker, and then you go from the sign like, hey, sorry, can I help? Do you need help? Like right there, you're offering Christ-like love. You're offering empathy and compassion. And you got to kind of see it into the big picture to how maybe a situation could be done. That's an example of showing love, where it doesn't, we don't have to be the a lightning rod or the defender, right? We always feel like that's like, that's what we're called to. That's why I think with many Christians that fall are the ones who are false defenders of the faith, who say, no, I need to defend the faith, that they're wrong. We got like these new modern attitudes of like ecumenism, where the patriarchs are with other bishops and they're having prayer dialogues and this and that or whatever. That's wrong. And how dare they, whatever. And I always tell people, like, when did you become the great theologian, and when did you go to a theological school? And it's very profound, where then general lay people now are using things from the faith to defend their arguments against someone else. That's not Christ-like. I mean,
There's no love there.
well, that's the point. Regardless of the person's right or wrong, what does it gain you if you're, what is Christ says, what does it gain you to win the world but lose your soul? So what does it gain you to be right, and yet you've lost yourself because you have hurt your brother, right? He'd rather say you hurt don't let the left, don't let the left hand know what the right hand does, and all these manners. What does that gain you if you're just doing it to harm your fellow man, or to ostracize, or to ridicule and stuff like that? And I think the reality is we all struggle. You need to A, embrace the struggle, B, realize that this is always a ladder. It's the proverbial ladder of divine ascent, because that's why we use St. John Climacus, and especially during Lent, and that we need to take these steps and know that you might slip, but that's okay. Try to get back on. It's the same thing as a child when they're trying to learn how to ride a bike, right? Get back on the bike. We keep doing them. What happens? They know how to do it, and that's great. They might fall again. Are they going to stop riding their bike in the future? I don't know, but they're going to still enjoy it. Same thing as a human. And I think that's what we struggle with. We would prefer to be sinful because of the reality that I'm going to fall again. You're rationalizing a sinful thought compared to yourself on a day-to-day basis, waking up and realize, I'm going to do the best that I can today. And then at the end of the day, in your humility, whether you were or you're not, you tell in our prayer, when we conclude our day and we give thanks to our Lord, you tell him, Lord, if I did anything wrong, you ask for forgiveness. But then if you do things right, then you kind of use it as a springboard for the following day. It's a progressive attitude, but you're going to struggle. And the thing is, when you put your mindset to it, you're going to have a lot of pirasmi and dokimasias. Pirasmi are the things that bother us, to take us off the focus of what's the good, and the dokimasias are the tests. What hurdles going to be placed in front of Effie today? Who's gonna bother you at work, or who's gonna not do their job? Who's not going to show up? And it's all tests. And so then, what are you going to do? It's the the matrix thing. What pill are you going to choose, red or blue? Right? You're going to be mean, or you're going to be nice. And the problem is, here's the problem. This is where then you say modern day. But if I'm nice, someone will take advantage of my niceness. Or am I going to be nice tomorrow? Or they say, it's just Effie. Don't worry about it. She doesn't care. She's too nice. Well, then no, I have to be FCD. I think in some certain situations, you can be both balanced and still be Christ-like, because there has to be order, there has to be respect, mutual. But if there's a mutual, we have the appropriateness to say, hey, I don't appreciate what you're doing. But then if it gets volatile, you have to know when to stop the volatility so you don't enhance it. Because what happens with volatility, when we get angry, it just continues to get worse. And what usually gets worse, then blasphemias, then bad words, right? And then, God forbid, actual actions. Who knows? Someone swings, someone, and then it could go even worse. Call police. You know what I mean? Like, it could just get out of hand. So I think it's on both avenues. But I think on a day-to-day basis, you got to continue to take that opportunity and understand how you're going to struggle. But then I think that's where our prayer life, when it's focused and it's a driving point for us and it gives us fulfillment, then it allows me just to have a drive on what I want to focus on my day-to-day life. Service, helping, loving, being compassionate. And I guarantee you, because you want to do that, you will have hurdles placed in front of you. And the question is, what you're going to do with those hurdles? Are you going to let them stop you? Are you going to go over them? How are you going to go over them? That also determines too. So you can progress because of two reasons. One, communion with God. Second, communion with each other. That's how you got to kind of take everything on a day-to-day basis. And kind of St. Ignatius is kind of implying that, because he's asking us to focus on the spirit freedom and not of the flesh freedom. Because the flesh freedom would be, yes, get angry, point out your frustrations, whatever's vile and affects others. And then I'm getting to an attitude now, not of maturity or think I'm anything great, but many situations when someone gets angry, someone's struggling, whatever, I'm now becoming an attitude of sympathy. I sympathize when someone's angry. I'm sympathizing when someone's frustrated. Not that I'm saying that they're right, but they're in that state. What's gotten that person to that state? And then I actually feel sorry for them. And then you first, for everything you always do, you pray. And then secondly, if you can, if it is asked of, you try to help. If not, remember, you can't help every situation. There's people who don't want to be helped or think they've done nothing wrong. I wish I could be like that, right? But I'm not.
Forgive them.
y-
You
yeah.
forgive them.
Yeah, again, that's for your own personal. But you got to understand there's a mutual thing where you'll also want to, because even if you take care of yourself spiritually, there's still a sense of incompleteness. Because what if it's like a family situation and you don't have someone that talks to you, doesn't want to relate with you or whatever, then what do you do in that manner? Oh, it's okay, I forgive them, but they don't want to forgive you or they don't want to do anything with you. What are you gonna do then? I'm gonna force them to? I can't. And so that's the heaviness of the situation. So it's kind of just, again, when I read the epistle of Paul, I think it was to 1 Corinthians, and he said, and when I was trying to use the context, and Paul was saying, and as the Lord of endurance and perseverance, our Lord gives us endurance and perseverance to deal with any situation in life, whether it's the outcome you wanted or the outcome you weren't expecting. He is always there. That's the answer for sure. The question is, are you going to accept it? And then are you going to build with that going forward? And that's what we have to acknowledge and recognize as we go forward and keep that in our day-to-day life. So, because you're not going to, because the problem, the reality that all of us have, you're not going to get the request that you want, because that's not how God works. He doesn't answer by request. Sometimes situations happen. And remember, all of us have free will. So if it's a request, say, I want to have a peaceful day at work. There's no guarantee to that. And I said, and what does that gain you if it happens? That you're going to be peaceful? You go back to what you said. How do you create peace? I want peace at work tomorrow. Okay, maybe I'll start with me. I'm going to come in with a good attitude. I'm going to be mindful. I'll be respectful and go from there. If something starts getting out of hand, then I'm going to try to either A, not get involved to ruin my peace, or B, if you have an experience or a level of, what's the term I want to use? Level of authority at work, and you can resolve an issue between people, then you should do that, because then you're also bringing peace into the situation. But sometimes we have to make those challenges. Sometimes we have to make those choices. It's not going to be easy, and that's part of life. But every day is going to be a struggle, and we always have to remember that the struggle is something we must embrace and realize that it's real, and that as we all have a cross that we bear, don't forget that cross, you're not carrying it by yourself. Is that when you have Christ, he makes that cross light. It is relevant, but it's light. And then when you have other ones connected in your life through prayer, through worship, through family and friends, well, then that Christ then is even lighter, because then people are carrying it with you or recognize. That's why when I see people, when they open themselves to asking for help, or, it's like a humility. When someone's humble, or like even like someone who's sick, right? And they're like, Father, can you pray for me? It's very humbling when I hear that, because you're asking something very sincere that you don't know if an answer is going to come of it. They're like, just pray for me. Or then when we say, pray for my family. And then what I always used to tell people, I want you to pray for them too. Because we always think that, the priest has, magic powers, or I have a direct connection with God. No, I am just like you. I'm just simply the initiator of the sacraments. I'm the initiator of a service, but it's a co-work. If I say the petition, the people don't respond, it's meaningless. If I prepare for Holy Communion, there's no one in the pews, no one can take communion. I can't offer the service. There has to be at least one person to come and receive. But what do you do? So that's, kind of food for thought in that discussion too. All right, let's stop there. It's already 8:22. So we're at page 25. Yeah. We're at page 25. At our next meeting in 2 weeks, we will continue there, and then we'll go into sermon number 4 as well too. I do want to thank all of you for joining us, and obviously the ones who came in person as well too. These are excellent discussions, and they are appropriately heavy topics. That's why I chose, on the care for the soul, because this is something that, as we said every week, it's something important for all of us to contemplate and think about. and to build our lives and our connections with our Lord and with each other. So, Me'afta, Sasefum Kalobradi, Voitiasas, with that, I pray you all have a blessed and beautiful night. God bless you, and thank you for joining us tonight. Take care, everyone.